everything. Gotcha. He was very bright, very smart. I mean, could put my earphones together. You know what I mean?
My nephew just drowned in the bathtub.
We still really don't know what really happened.
When police arrived at the Clinton Township apartment on January 11, 2010, they found a 4-year-old boy dead in a bathtub and 2 women completely dry. Think about that. DeAngelo Tobia had been forcefully drowned, compression injuries proving someone held him underwater. The people responsible weren't strangers. They were the grandmother and aunt he trusted. What seemed tragic became one of Michigan's most confusing murder cases. 3 mistrials, 1 conviction. But the question remains, what really happened behind those closed doors? But this story begins 2 days earlier, on an ordinary weekend that would become anything but ordinary. Before we begin, a quick word. If you're new here, tap that subscribe button. Drop a comment below. Have you ever heard a case where the truth stayed hidden? Your engagement helps us bring more true crime stories to light. This story is based on real court records, police reports, and documented testimony from the death of DeAngelo Tobia in 2010. DeAngelo Tobia was 4 years old when his grandmother's apartment became the last place he would sleep. Saturday, January 9, 2010. He arrived at the Clinton Place apartment for what everyone believed would be an ordinary weekend visit. Terry Rita Bura, 60 years old, had raised 3 daughters and often watched her grandchildren in this apartment on weekends when their parents needed help. Her youngest daughter, Tonina Borgia, 25, was living at home, a fashion design student working late-night jobs and studying her craft at the sewing machine that hummed in the corner of the living room. DeAngelo settled in easily. The apartment was warm against the Michigan winter outside. Movies played on the television while Tonina worked at her sewing. He was the kind of child who could entertain himself, bright enough to focus on small tasks that would frustrate other 4-year-olds. When he found a pair of broken toy headphones, he didn't ask for help. He turned them over in his small hands, examining the pieces, understanding without instruction how they fit together. Tonina watched him work. The toy came apart and went back together under his fingers, methodical and patient. She smiled. "You need to be a mechanic," she told him. The nickname stuck. Little Mechanic, a 4-year-old who could reassemble what adults had written off as broken. Sunday passed the same way. More movies. Terry beside him on the sofa, Tonina at her machine. DeAngelo asked about his brother. "Your brother will come next time," Terry told him. The weekend was winding down. Ordinary in every way that weekends with grandmothers are ordinary, soft voices, familiar rooms, the comfort of people who loved him. No one in that apartment knew this was the last time they would see him this way. Sunday night, January 10, 2010, 10:30 in the evening. DeAngelo lay on the living room sofa beside his grandmother, drowsy from the long day, still wearing his Spider-Man pajamas. The apartment was quiet now. The sewing machine had stopped. The movies had ended. He drifted into sleep the way children do, quickly, completely, trusting the world around him to stay safe while he rested. Years later, Tonina would describe him in 3 words that carried the weight of everything lost. He was very bright, very smart. But that night, he was just a boy asleep on a sofa, 4 years old. Small hands that could fix broken things, a mind quick enough to earn a nickname from adults who noticed, a child who had spent an unremarkable weekend with his grandmother and aunt, watching movies and playing with toys, falling asleep in a warm apartment while winter pressed against the windows outside. Sunday night, January 10, 2010, 10:30 p.m. DeAngelo fell asleep on the sofa beside his grandmother, a 4-year-old boy in Spider-Man pajamas who had spent the weekend watching movies and fixing broken toys. It was the last time anyone would see him awake. 8 hours later, 911 would receive the call every dispatcher dreads. 8 hours passed. The call came in at 7:14 on a Monday morning. "My nephew just drowned in the bathtub." Tonina's voice on the line was steady, controlled, the kind of composure that didn't match the words coming out of her mouth. My nephew just drowned in the bathtub. Can you send somebody over? She said, not yelling, not panicking, a statement of fact delivered with the emotional weight of someone calling to report a broken appliance. The dispatcher had fielded hundreds of emergency calls, but would remember this one for the odd flatness in the caller's voice when she said the child had been underwater for an hour. She walked Tonina through the protocol: get him out of the tub, start CPR, keep him breathing. Tonina said she had already pulled DeAngelo out, that he was on the floor now, his lips blue. How long was he in there? The dispatcher asked. I don't know, for a while, like an hour. An hour. That detail would sit heavy in the case file later. A 4-year-old underwater for an hour. By the time someone finds a child after that long, they already know what they're going to find. But Tonina was on the phone asking for help, as if help could still matter. The dispatcher guided her through compressions, through rescue breaths. She asked for 2 people, one to pump the chest, one to breathe. Terry was in the apartment, pacing the hallway. Mom, can you come here? The dispatcher said through Tonina. But Terry's help was minimal at best. She didn't kneel beside her grandson. She didn't put her mouth to his. She stayed on the periphery while Tonina followed instructions over the phone. The dispatcher would later say the caller sounded like she was ordering a pizza, not reporting a dying child. 7:30 in the morning, 15 minutes after the call, police knocked on the apartment door. Tonina and Terry answered together. The apartment was dark, blinds closed, lights off, the kind of darkness that made no sense for a Monday morning in a home where a child had just been found. Officers stepped inside with flashlights, scanning the scene, moving toward the bathroom where DeAngelo lay on the floor, paramedics already working over his small body. But it was the women the officers noticed first. Dry. Both of them. Completely dry. Not damp. Not wrung out. Not the kind of wet you get when you reach into a bathtub and haul out 40 pounds of dead weight submerged in water. Tonina stood there in dry clothes, dry hands, dry hair. Terry, the same. The officers looked at them, looked at the bathtub still full of water, looked back. You cannot pull a drowning child from a bathtub and emerge dry. The laws of physics don't allow it. Water doesn't cooperate that way. You reach in, you get wet, your sleeves, your shirt, your arms up to the elbows, water splashing onto the floor, onto you, everywhere. The officers stood in the doorway, flashlights scanning the dark apartment. Neither woman had a drop of water on her clothes, not on her hands, not anywhere. You cannot pull a drowning child from a bathtub and emerge dry. 45 minutes after that call, DeAngelo would be pronounced dead, and the questions would only multiply. The officers moved past them into the apartment. Inside, the apartment was dark, except for a single light bleeding from the hallway bathroom. Blinds drawn, overhead lights off, the kind of darkness that takes effort at 7:30 on a Monday morning. Paramedics were already on the living room floor, working over DeAngelo's small body, hands moving in the practiced rhythm of compressions, trying to restart what had already stopped. The detective had seen drowning cases before, but something about this scene felt wrong from the start. The way neither woman could look at each other or at the officers. The silence where there should have been chaos. He moved toward Terry, notebook out, needing basic information. "What's the child's full name?" he asked. Terry looked at him, then away. "DeAngelo." His mother. "You're the mother?" His. "Yes." "When was he born?" She stared at him. I can't." A woman who identified herself as the child's mother but couldn't provide his birth date. He would learn later that Terry was not DeAngelo's mother but his grandmother, that she had watched him dozens of weekends, that she should have known his birthday as well as her own daughter's birthdays. What grandmother forgets her grandson's name in the moment he's dying? Tonina stood against the wall, arms crossed, watching the paramedics work. No tears. Terry paced near the kitchen. No tears. The detective scanned the apartment, every light off except the bathroom. Both women bone dry, despite claiming they had just hauled a 4-year-old from a tub of water and now. This? A grandmother who couldn't recall the most basic facts about the child dying on her living room floor. He wrote it all down. Subject identified self as mother, but is grandmother, could not recall victim's birthday. The paramedics lifted DeAngelo onto the gurney. His Spider-Man pajamas were soaked through, heavy with bathwater. They moved fast, radio chatter crackling as they carried him out to the ambulance. Tonina followed, directed into a police car. Terry was guided toward another vehicle. The women were separated without discussion. At the hospital, emergency room staff took over. Fluorescent lights, the sharp smell of antiseptic, medical equipment beeping in rhythms that tried to find a heartbeat that wasn't there. They worked over him for minutes that felt longer, trying to pull back a life that had already slipped away. The ER doctor stepped back. Time of death, 8:03 a.m., 45 minutes after the 911 call. DeAngelo Tobia, 4 years old, dead in wet pajamas that two dry women claimed they had pulled him from. The detective approached Tonina in the waiting area. "We need you to come to the station to give a statement," he said, "not a request." She nodded, still calm, still composed, in a way that didn't match the morning's events. He made another note for the report. Victim transported in wet clothing, family members transported separately. DeAngelo Tobia was 4 years old when he died that Monday morning in January. The first interrogation wouldn't begin for hours, but the questions were already forming. Two women in a dark apartment, both completely dry, one who couldn't remember the dead child's name. By that afternoon, both women would be sitting in separate interrogation rooms, telling very different versions of the same night. That afternoon, they sat in separate rooms. The recording device clicked on at 2:15 that afternoon, and the detective asked Tonina Borgia to walk him through the last time she saw her nephew alive. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The metal table between them held only a folder, unopened. A red light on the recording device glowed steady. Tonina folded her hands, then unfolded them. She described the weekend as normal. Movies. DeAngelo fixing toys. Sunday night, he fell asleep in his Spider-Man pajamas. Nothing unusual until Monday morning, when she found him in the bathtub. "I think the floor was really wet in there, really slippery, so I think he bumped his head," she said. The detective wrote that down. "You think? Or you know?" Tonina's hands moved to her lap. I think that's what happened. The floor was wet. Where was the water from? The tub. It must have splashed. Or maybe he turned on the sink. I don't know. It was just really wet. Her voice rose at the ends of her sentences, statements turning into questions. She gestured as she spoke, hands illustrating the wet floor, the slippery surface. Then her hands would stop mid-air, as if she'd forgotten what they were supposed to be doing. Slipped, bumped his head, fell into the water. An accident that requires no one to blame. Experts who later analyzed the recording would count how many times she said, "I think in that first hour," 47. The detective let her talk. He watched her eyes, her hands, the way she leaned forward when she wanted him to believe something, and leaned back when she was uncertain. He listened for what she said and what she didn't say. The weekend was ordinary. The morning was a discovery. The explanation was a theory. "Walk me through the morning again," he said. "What time did you wake up?" Early. I don't remember exactly." "What woke you?" She paused. "I just woke up." "And you went to the bathroom?" "I think. Yes. And that's when I saw him." "Already in the tub?" "Yes." "Floating?" She nodded. Her hands were perfectly still now. The detective opened the folder. Medical examiner's preliminary notes. He hadn't shared them with her yet. Hadn't mentioned what the hospital staff had already documented. He looked at Tonina across the table, at the woman who had called 911 with the emotional affect of someone ordering takeout, who had stood dry where a child had supposedly drowned, who now sat here saying, I think as if repetition could make theory fact. He closed the folder and looked at her directly. Wet floors don't explain finger-shaped bruises around a child's neck. Wet bathroom floors. A 4-year-old who slipped and bumped his head. It was the kind of story that happens every day in America. The kind of tragedy that requires no villain, except wet floors don't leave compression marks around a child's mouth, and they certainly don't explain bruises shaped like adult fingers wrapped around a small neck. The detective hadn't mentioned those details yet, but they were already in the medical examiner's preliminary notes. The bruises told a different story than wet floors. The detective needed to know what story the rest of the apartment would tell. 3 days later, Tonina sat in the same interrogation room, and this time the detective asked about her bedroom. The question seemed innocent enough. Walk me through your bedroom. Where do you sleep? What furniture is there? What do you keep under the bed? Standard questions for building a mental map of the scene. The kind of questions that usually produce nothing but mundane details about storage bins and dust bunnies. Tonina described the layout. Bed against the wall. Dresser. Closet. She kept some things under the bed. Old boxes. Items she didn't use often. What kind of items? The detective asked. Just stuff. Sometimes I look under there for jewelry I've misplaced. There's like little scratches, and there was like a piece of shower curtain under my bed. The detective's pen stopped mid-word. A piece of the shower curtain. From the bathroom where DeAngelo. Tonina's eyes widened slightly, realizing what she had just said. It was cut. It wasn't torn. It was like her hand flew up to cover her mouth. Too late. The words were already on the recording device, already in the detective's notes, already impossible to take back. Why would a piece of cut shower curtain be under your bed? She lowered her hand slowly. There was also a Barbie book. A Barbie book. She had just mentioned a deliberately cut piece of shower curtain hidden under her bed in the apartment where her nephew died in a bathtub, and now she was talking about a Barbie book as if that explained anything, as if redirecting to children's books could make the detective forget what she had just revealed. Body language analysts who reviewed the tape would later mark that exact moment. Hand to mouth, eyes to the ceiling, subject attempting to unsay what cannot be unsaid. The detective leaned forward. Let's go back to the shower curtain. You said it was cut, not torn. How do you know it was cut? I could tell. The edge was straight. When did you find this piece? I don't remember exactly. Before Monday morning or after? Pause. The chair scraped as Tonina shifted her weight. Before, I think. Or maybe after. I don't know. Was it from the bathroom where DeAngelo was found? I don't know where it came from, but you knew it was from a shower curtain, and you knew it was cut, not torn, and it was under your bed. She said nothing. Her hands were in her lap now, perfectly still the way they had been when she talked about finding DeAngelo floating in the tub. The detective wrote it down. Pen scratching across the page in the quiet room. Cut shower curtain. Under subject's bed. Subject could not explain origin or purpose. The note went into the case file along with dry clothes, forgotten grandson's name, and finger-shaped bruises. 4 pieces that didn't connect yet, but would. While Tonina tried to explain away shower curtains and Barbie books, Terry was in another part of the building, making a very different choice. While Tonina talked, Terry made a different calculation. While Tonina was explaining shower curtains and wet floors, Terry Rita Bora sat in a different room listening to her rights and made a choice. The detective sat across from her at another metal table, notepad ready, recording device on. He read the Miranda warning the way he had read it hundreds of times before. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You have the right to an attorney. Terry's hands were folded on the table. She listened without interrupting. Do you understand these rights? The detective asked. Yes. Are you willing to waive them? She paused. I think I'd rather have a lawyer. The detective wrote that down. A lawyer request. The words that end every interrogation before it begins. Not a lawyer, I can't afford a lawyer. You want a court-appointed attorney? Yes. The detective closed his notepad. That was it. Once the words were spoken, the law was clear. No questions. No conversation. No attempt to explain that it would go easier if she just told her side of the story. None of that was allowed anymore. The moment she invoked her right to counsel, the interrogation was over. In any investigation, a lawyer request means interrogation ends, but it doesn't mean the investigation stops. He could still inform her of certain facts. I need to inform you we have a warrant to search your residence, and a forensic nurse will be collecting samples. Terry nodded. She didn't ask what kind of samples. She didn't ask why they needed to search the apartment. She sat quietly, hands still folded, waiting. What came next was a sterile evidence collection room and a forensic nurse with latex gloves and plastic bags. Hair samples from Terry's head, fingernail clippings, careful scrapings from under each nail in case something from Monday morning was still trapped there, skin cells, fibers, traces of whatever she had touched in that dark apartment. Terry submitted to each procedure without protest, without questions, without offering any explanation. The plastic evidence bags crinkled as they were sealed, labeled, prepared for transport to the lab. The detective stood outside the collection room, watching through the observation window. Terry Rita Borgia, the woman who couldn't remember her own grandson's birth date, who had identified herself as his mother instead of his grandmother, who had been completely dry when she should have been soaked. The woman most likely to have answers was now the one person he couldn't ask. Terry Rita Borgia would not speak without counsel present, would not explain the dark apartment or the dry clothes or why she couldn't remember her grandson's name. But silence does not stop forensic science. The samples the nurse collected that afternoon, hair, fingernail clippings, scrapings from under Terry's nails, would go to the lab along with everything taken from the apartment. And in mid-January, the medical examiner's full report would arrive with findings that would eliminate accident from the list of possibilities entirely. The forensic samples went to the lab. 2 weeks later, the results started coming back. The phone on the detective's desk rang on a Friday afternoon in mid-January, 2 weeks after a 4-year-old died in a bathtub. The medical examiner had performed hundreds of drowning autopsies, but called the detective directly when findings indicated this 4-year-old had not died accidentally. His voice on the line was flat, the way voices go when delivering news that will change everything about a case. Cause is drowning, but you need to see the other findings, sending full report now. The detective hung up and waited. Within the hour, a courier arrived with a manila envelope, sealed, marked urgent. He opened it at his desk. Autopsy report. Photographs. Pages of clinical terminology describing in precise medical language what had been done to DeAngelo Tobia in that bathroom. Cause of death? Drowning. That part matched what everyone already knew. Everything after that made accident impossible. Compression injuries, perioral region, consistent with forceful manual pressure. The medical examiner's words for what happens when an adult hand presses down over a child's nose and mouth hard enough to leave marks. Petechial hemorrhaging. Small blood vessels bursting in the face from pressure and struggle. Contusions around the neck. Facial abrasions. The detective read each line slowly. The autopsy transformed the investigation from tragic accident into murder case, with forensic proof that DeAngelo was forcefully held underwater by an adult hand. The photographs showed what the words described: small bruises in patterns that matched adult fingers, marks around the mouth shaped like someone had cupped their palm over his face and pressed. The kind of injuries that don't happen when a child slips on a wet floor and bumps his head. The medical examiner had written it in detached clinical language, but what the words described was a 4-year-old fighting for air that would not come. The detective looked at the case file spread across his desk. Tonina's story about wet floors and slipping. Terry's refusal to speak without a lawyer. Both women completely dry when they should have been soaked. A cut piece of shower curtain hidden under Tonina's bed. A grandmother who couldn't remember her grandson's name. And now this. Forensic evidence that someone had held DeAngelo down in that bathtub with enough force to leave compression marks on his face, had kept him underwater while he struggled, while his small hands tried to push away whatever was covering his mouth, while his body fought for breath that wouldn't come. The detective turned to his colleague at the next desk. This wasn't an accident. Someone held him down. He pulled Tonina Borgia's case file from the stack and placed the autopsy report on top. Medical photographs face down for now. Wet floors and slipping accidents don't leave compression marks around a child's mouth. The slip and fall story was about to meet forensic science. When Tonina returned to that interrogation room, the detective would have questions she couldn't answer with, I think. The next interrogation wouldn't be about theories. It would be about facts. When Tonina Borgia walked back into the interrogation room, the detective had the medical examiner's report open on the table between them. She sat down across from him. The recording device clicked on. He asked her to walk through the story one more time. The wet floors, the slipping, DeAngelo bumping his head. She repeated it, voice steady, hands folded in her lap. I think he slipped. I think the floor was wet. I think he bumped his head. The detective let her finish. Then he turned the autopsy report so she could see it. The medical examiner found compression injuries around DeAngelo's mouth, bruises around his neck, abrasions on his face, he said. Tonina's eyes moved to the pages in front of her, clinical terminology in black text, diagrams showing where the injuries were documented. These injuries are consistent with someone forcefully holding a child underwater. Tonina, silence. The recording device continued its steady hum. She didn't say, I think. She didn't offer an explanation. She looked at the report and said nothing. The detective continued, voice level, laying out what forensic science had proven. Compression, marks around the mouth, consistent with an adult hand pressed over a child's face. Contusions on the neck, consistent with manual pressure. Petechial hemorrhaging, small blood vessels bursting from force and struggle. Facial abrasions from something pressing against skin. Before we reveal what the detective told Tonina next about her mother's fate, comment A if you think Terry acted alone, or B if you think both women were involved, and add one short reason why. Please note, what follows contains some recreated details for narrative purposes, drawn from documented interrogation records. He closed the report and looked at her directly. Your mother is going to get charged with murder. The autopsy findings scientifically proved DeAngelo was murdered, eliminating accident from possibility and giving investigators forensic proof that someone in that apartment forcefully drowned a 4-year-old. Wet floors don't cause compression injuries around a mouth. Slipping doesn't leave finger-shaped bruises on a neck. The medical evidence didn't care about, I think, or theories about bathrooms. It documented what happened to a child's body in clinical, irrefutable detail. Tonina sat very still. Her face had drained of color. The detective watched her process what he'd just told her. That the slip and fall story was medically impossible. That the science said someone held DeAngelo down with force. That her mother would face murder charges based on these findings. The detective let the autopsy findings sit between them for a long moment. Then, he opened another section of the file and pulled out notes from their previous interview. That piece of shower curtain you mentioned, the one cut and hidden under your bed, he wanted to talk about that now. Because murder investigations don't stop at cause of death, they ask why evidence gets hidden. The detective pulled out his notes from her previous interview. The shower curtain. That cut piece hidden under her bed. Why would a piece of cut shower curtain be hidden under your bed? Tonina shifted in her chair. Her hands moved to her lap, then back to the table. I was looking for. There was also a Barbie book. A Barbie book, the detective repeated. Yes, under the bed. I was looking for jewelry, and I found that and the book. He waited. She didn't continue. The curtain, Tonina. Why was it there? I don't know. Maybe it. There's scratches and everything. Scratches? On the floor under my bed. Little marks. I noticed them when I was looking. Jewelry, Barbie book, scratches. None of which explained a cut piece of bathroom curtain hidden under a bed in the apartment where a 4-year-old drowned with compression injuries around his mouth. Did you cut that piece of curtain? Tonina's hands gestured vaguely. I need to return books to the library. What? Books? I have library books that are overdue, and I don't want to get fined. Her voice was speeding up, words tumbling out faster, as if momentum could carry her past the question. She talked about her fashion design classes, about fabric samples she kept, about feeling insulted by how the investigators were treating her, about needing to check on something at her mother's apartment. The detective redirected her each time. The shower curtain, the cut piece, why it was under your bed. Each time, Tonina pivoted to something else. The scratches again. The Barbie book again. A tangent about her sewing machine. A complaint about the questions. Her voice rising at the end of sentences, turning statements into questions, as if she were unsure of what she herself was saying. Interrogation experts trained to recognize deflection. When a subject changes topic 3 times in 60 seconds, they're protecting something they cannot or will not say. The detective documented every deflection in his notes. Subject redirects to irrelevant details when pressed on curtain origin. Subject mentions Barbie book, jewelry, scratches, library books. Subject does not provide direct answer to why cut bathroom curtain was concealed under her bed. He watched her hands, never still, gesturing at nothing. He watched her eyes, moving to the ceiling, to the walls, anywhere but his face. He listened to the pauses that stretched too long when he asked directly, followed by rushed speech about anything except the answer. The detective closed his notebook and looked at Tonina Borgia directly. She would never explain that piece of fabric. Not in this interview, not in any interview to come. The cut shower curtain would go into evidence bags, be photographed, be analyzed, be presented in court. But why it was cut, why it was hidden, what it meant, those answers would remain locked behind deflections about jewelry and Barbie books and library returns. Some silences speak louder than the evasions that fill them. Tonina would never explain the curtain, but Terry, after weeks of silence, decided to talk. After 2 weeks of silence behind a lawyer's wall, Terry Rita Borgia asked to speak to the detective. The jail interview room was smaller than the police stations, harsher under fluorescent lights that made everything look pale and worn. Terry sat across from the detective at a metal table, appearing smaller than she had before, older, as if the weeks in custody had compressed something fundamental. She looked at him with confusion. "Are you my lawyer?" "No, I'm the detective." She nodded. Then, a moment later, asked again, "Are you my lawyer?" "No, ma'am. I'm the detective who investigated DeAngelo's death." She seemed to understand that time. Her hands were folded on the table in front of her, fingers twisting together, then still, then twisting again. The detective waited. She had asked to speak to him. Whatever she wanted to say, it would come when she was ready. "I did not plan this," Terry said. Her voice was soft, uncertain. "It was an accident. I don't remember what happened." The detective wrote that down. An admission wrapped inside a denial wrapped inside claimed amnesia. She admitted something occurred under her watch, but claimed complete memory loss about events, offering acknowledgement of tragedy while providing zero usable information. "What do you remember from that morning?" he asked. I don't remember." "What time did you wake up?" "I don't remember." "Was DeAngelo awake when you got up?" "I don't remember." Did you hear anything that morning? Sounds from the bathroom? I don't remember. How do you remember? It was not planned, but not remember what it was. The detective tried different approaches, walking her backward through the night before. Did she remember putting DeAngelo to bed? What room he slept in? What he was wearing? Walking her forward from when she first realized something was wrong. Who called 911? Where was Tonina? What did she do? Each question met the same response. Words that functioned as both answer and refusal to answer. I don't remember. I don't remember. I don't remember. Terry sat across from him, hands folded, voice trailing at the ends of sentences, confusion seeming to settle over her like fog whenever he pressed for specifics. Real confusion or performed confusion, organic memory loss or strategic amnesia. The detective couldn't tell, and it didn't matter for the purposes of this interview. She wasn't giving him anything he could use. Institutional background noise filtered through the walls, doors clanging. Voices in hallways, the hum of ventilation systems. The detective's pen moved across his notepad, recording non-answers that added up to a kind of statement, even in their emptiness. The detective documented Terry's statements, admitted something occurred, claimed accident, not plan, professed complete amnesia for details. It would be the only formal statement she made to investigators. Words carefully balanced between admission and denial, confession and erasure. But Terry Rita Bura would say more, much more, when she thought only her daughter was listening. The jail phones record everything. What Terry wouldn't say to the detective, she said to her daughter, and the line was recording. The recorded jail phone connected Vicky Bura to her mother on the fourth ring. Static and echo on the line, the hollow sound of institutional phone systems. Vicky waited through the automated message that reminded both parties the call was being monitored and recorded. Then Terry's voice. "What happened, Mom?" Vicky asked. "What happened to DeAngelo? I don't know what happened to him." "Mom." Silence stretched across the line. Background noise from the jail filtered through. Then Terry spoke again. Words that came closer to confession than anything she'd told the detective. "I just snapped. I think I was just too many things bothering me." Vicky waited. Terry continued, voice breaking. "The bills, the stress, everything piling up. Depression pressing down until something gave way." She admitted she snapped under pressure, coming closer to confession than any interrogation achieved, giving motive while still avoiding full admission of what happened to DeAngelo. "Did you know what the consequences would be?" Vicky asked. "No, I didn't." The recording captured every word, every pause. Every moment when Terry's voice wavered and Vicky's voice tried to stay steady. A mother admitting she broke without saying what broke. A daughter trying to understand without asking the question that would force an answer too terrible to hear. Every call from county jail is recorded, and every recording can be subpoenaed, a fact that Terry either forgot or no longer cared about. Days later, Vicky walked into the police station. She had information about Tonina that investigators needed to know. The detective met her in an interview room. It had happened during a car ride after Tonina's psychological evaluation. The two sisters alone, Tonina talking in ways that didn't make sense, saying things Vicky couldn't ignore. "She told me she was a killer in her sleep, that she stabs people," Vicky said. The detective wrote that down. Vicky provided a written statement. Subject claimed to act out of body, to harm people while unconscious. Tonina had described acting outside herself, doing things while sleepwalking that she couldn't remember when awake, violence she couldn't control. "Did Tonina say this related to DeAngelo?" the detective asked. Vicky looked at him directly. "She didn't say it didn't." Vicky reported that Tonina claimed to be a sleepwalking killer who acts out of body, offering investigators alternate suspect confession, though Tonina herself would never testify to those words. She would later say she'd been off her medication, experiencing a psychotic break, that nothing she said should be believed. Two women, two admissions of some kind of responsibility, neither willing or able to say exactly what happened in that bathroom. Terry confessed to snapping, but not to murder. Tonina allegedly confessed to being a killer in her sleep, but would never repeat those words on record. The closest thing to truth that DeAngelo's family would ever hear came through jail phones and secondhand reports, words that raised more questions than they answered. And there was still one more question that neither woman could answer directly. The question that remained was the one neither woman could answer. The detectives sat across from Terry in the quiet interrogation room. They had been here before, through denials and claimed amnesia and partial admissions. Now, he asked the question that cut to the heart of everything. Is it possible you did something to DeAngelo while you were sleepwalking? While you weren't in control of yourself? Terry's hands gripped the edge of the table. The pause stretched long, filling the room with silence that meant more than words. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. Her eyes moved to the ceiling, then back to her hands. Then to some point on the wall that wasn't the detective's face. I don't know, she said finally. Not a denial. Not an admission. An answer that lived in the space between both. In a separate room, the detective posed the same question to Tonina. Could you have done something without remembering it? Without meaning to? Tonina's response came wrapped in hedges and maybes. I was trying to help him. I don't understand what happened. She trailed off. Started again. Maybe. I don't know. There was so much happening. Neither woman could answer with certainty. Neither woman would give the detective what he needed, a clear yes or a definitive no. They lived in, in answers that admitted possibility without confirming action. The question itself was both genius and impossible. It offered suspects an escape route. I didn't mean to, while simultaneously confirming involvement, but it required them to admit they were capable of something monstrous, even if unintentional. For Terry and Tonina, caught between self-preservation and the weight of DeAngelo's death, the question had no safe answer. Yes meant admission. No meant denying what they'd already half confessed. Maybe meant living forever in the uncertainty. The detective closed his notebook and reviewed what the investigation had produced. Compression injuries on a 4-year-old boy, suggesting someone held him down. A shower curtain piece that matched the bruising pattern, cut and hidden under a bed. 2 women who both admitted some form of involvement. Terry saying she snapped, Tonina claiming to be a killer in her sleep. Evidence pointing toward intentional harm. But no definitive confession, no complete account of what happened in that bathroom on January 11, 2010. The case had hit a wall, not from lack of evidence, but from the impossibility of getting either woman to break completely. They would never say exactly what they did to DeAngelo. They would never explain how a 4-year-old who fell asleep on a sofa in Spider-Man pajamas ended up dead in a bathtub with injuries that told a story of force and struggle. The investigation had done everything it could. The evidence told a story of intentional harm, but neither woman would complete that story. Now, it moved to a courtroom where 12 strangers would have to decide what happened in that bathroom based on evidence alone. And that process would take 8 years, 3 hung juries, and more questions than answers. 12 strangers would decide, but it would take more than 12 and more than one attempt before anyone could reach a verdict. The gavel falls, and Terry Rita Bura rises to face her first jury. The prosecutor enters with case files organized, confident the evidence will speak for itself. The autopsy report showing compression injuries, the shower curtain piece that matched the bruising, 2 women who both admitted some form of involvement. Terry's defense attorney focuses on reasonable doubt, the gaps in testimony, the absence of definitive proof. The judge reviews the admissibility questions that will derail the first trial before it can conclude. 12 people selected to decide what happened in that bathroom, facing evidence that points toward guilt but stops short of certainty. They listen, as the prosecution builds the case methodically, piece by piece. Then the collapse. The statement is inadmissible. "I'm declaring a mistrial," the judge says. Terry's partial admission, "I did not plan this," ruled inadmissible due to an interrogation technicality. Without those words, the prosecution's case weakens. The trial ends before the jury can deliberate. First mistrial. "We'll try again," the prosecutor says afterward. The evidence is still strong. Second trial, 2011. Preparation underway. Prosecution confident they've corrected the mistakes. They have a witness who can testify to crucial timeline details. Someone whose testimony might fill the gaps the first jury never got to weigh. Then, days before trial, that witness is arrested on unrelated charges, unavailable. The testimony that might have made the difference will never be heard. The prosecutor tells Amelia Toya outside the courtroom, "Our witness has been arrested. We have no choice but to ask for another mistrial." Second mistrial before jury selection even completes. Key witness arrested days before second trial. Prosecution loses crucial testimony they'd counted on to strengthen the case. How many times can you watch justice promised and then postponed before it stops feeling like justice at all? Third trial, 2012. This time, the trial proceeds fully. Testimony heard. Evidence presented. The jury deliberates for days. The Toya family waits, trying to hold on to hope that's been disappointed twice already. Then the jury sends a note. "We are unable to reach a unanimous verdict," the jury foreman says, hopelessly deadlocked. No consensus on whether the evidence proves murder beyond reasonable doubt. Third mistrial. Amelia and the Toya family sit in the courtroom benches, faces blank, no tears left after 3 years of this. Outside the courtroom, Amelia looks at the prosecutor. "How many times do we have to do this?" No one has an answer. 3 mistrials in 2 years. The evidence hasn't changed. Compression injuries, shower curtain, 2 women who admit some involvement but won't complete the story. The prosecution decides to try one more time. Fourth trial, scheduled for 2018. 6 more years of waiting, and then a courtroom that finally reaches a verdict. 6 years passed. And then the courtroom filled again, March 11, 2013, and the prosecutor stands to read testimony from a witness who refuses to appear. The same courtroom, the same evidence presented again. Autopsy report showing compression injuries, shower curtain matching the bruise pattern, the timeline of January 11, 2010. The prosecution methodical. The defense attorney poking at reasonable doubt, at gaps in the story, at the absence of a complete confession. Amelia Toya sits in the gallery, exhausted after years of waiting through 3 mistrials that led nowhere. The physical evidence hasn't changed, the prosecutor says. What happened to DeAngelo Tobia in that bathroom remains the same. But this trial will be different, not because of new evidence, because of words spoken years ago that will finally be heard in this courtroom. The prosecutor stands. He holds pages of prior sworn testimony, words given by someone who is not here today, but whose statement will speak for her. Tonina Borgia's testimony, taken in an earlier proceeding, now read into the record while she stays away. The courtroom goes quiet. Tonina Borgia stated under oath that her mother admitted killing DeAngelo Tobia. The defense attorney objects. Hearsay from a witness who won't face cross-examination. The prosecutor responds without hesitation. It's a prior sworn statement. It's admissible and it's devastating. The judge allows it. The prosecutor reads Tonina's words aloud. Her mother, Terry, told her what happened, admitted to killing DeAngelo, confessed to her own daughter what she would never confess to investigators. Tonina's testimony reveals Terry allegedly admitted killing DeAngelo. Daughter's words become the evidence that convicts mother. A daughter's testimony, given once and never repeated, read aloud by a prosecutor while the daughter stays away, and a mother hears her own daughter's words send her to prison for life. Terry sits at the defense table, no reaction visible on her face. She has heard her daughter's words used against her, the closest thing to a confession this case will ever have, delivered secondhand through testimony. Tonina gave, but will never. Repeat in person. The jury deliberates for days. Then they return. We find the defendant guilty of first-degree felony murder, the jury foreman says. Terry shows no reaction. The judge imposes the mandatory sentence. The sentence is life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Terry Rita Borgia is 70 years old. She will die in prison. Outside the courtroom afterward, Amelia Toya speaks to reporters. He's been gone 8 years. Now, at least there's an answer. Terry is led from the courtroom in handcuffs at 70 years old. 8 years after DeAngelo Tobia's death, someone has been convicted. But Tonina, who gave the testimony that secured conviction, never testified in person at this trial, and Terry herself never admitted in court what her daughter claimed she said in private. The conviction answers one question but leaves others unresolved. The questions outlived the conviction, and the woman who carried them to prison died without answering. 5 years into a life sentence, Terry Rita Borgia dies of cancer in a Michigan prison, May 2018, never having spoken the full truth in court. She was 75, convicted of killing her grandson but never admitting in court what her daughter claimed she said privately. 5 years served of a sentence that was supposed to last the rest of her life. The legal case closed with her death. The questions did not. Tonina Borgia, who told Vicky she helped Terry, who called herself the killer, who admitted some involvement repeatedly, never charged with any crime. She provided testimony against her mother, but faced no prosecution herself. Tonina, who explicitly called herself the killer to Vicky, was never charged. Convicted mother dies in prison, while daughter who claimed that title remains free. Tonina told me she was the killer. Those were her words, not mine, Vicky would tell investigators years later. But those words never led to charges. Tonina was a witness, not a defendant. Her statements about being a killer in her sleep, about helping her mother, about things she couldn't remember or couldn't explain, all of it remained outside the courtroom where Terry stood trial alone. Who really knows what happened in that bathroom? The woman convicted who never fully confessed, or the daughter who confessed to family but never faced charges? Years after the conviction, Tonina gives interviews. She changes details. She floats theories. Maybe there was someone else. Maybe we don't know everything, she says in one interview, despite no evidence of any intruder, despite the fact that only she and Terry were in that apartment when DeAngelo died. 13 years after his death, Tonina's explanations still shift. What happened in that bathroom remains fractured between two women's accounts, one dead, one still talking, neither ever telling a complete story that makes all the evidence fit. DeAngelo Tobia was 4 years old when he died, January 11, 2010, small enough that an adult could hold him underwater, young enough to still wear Spider-Man pajamas, bright enough that his aunt called him Little Mechanic because he could fix broken toys. He spent his last weekend watching movies at his grandmother's apartment, fell asleep on the sofa beside her Sunday night, and never woke up. Compression injuries suggested someone held him down. A shower curtain piece matched the bruising. 2 women admitted involvement in different ways at different times, one saying she snapped, one claiming to be a sleepwalking killer. One convicted, one never charged. Years of trials. But the exact truth of his final moments died with the people who were there. The legal system called it first-degree felony murder and sent Terry Rita Borgia to prison for life. But the full truth remains split between a dead woman's silence and a living woman's shifting stories. DeAngelo Tobia's last moments, whether accident, impulse, or something planned, stay in that bathroom with the people who were there. Some true crime cases close with certainty. This one closes with a conviction and an asterisk, and that's where DeAngelo's story ends. Not with answers, but with questions that will never be fully resolved. DeAngelo Tobia was 4 years old. He loved Spider-Man. He trusted the people who were supposed to protect him. His life was cut short in a bathroom on a cold January morning, and the truth of what happened died with the only 2 people who were there. What remains is a case that haunts everyone who looks into it, a reminder that justice and truth are not always the same thing. DeAngelo deserves to be remembered not as a mystery, but as a child who should still be here. This case teaches us that sometimes the hardest truth to accept is that we may never know the full truth. Some stories don't end with closure. Some questions don't have answers. What we can do is remember the victims, honor their memory, and never stop asking the hard questions, even when the answers refuse to come. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a case. Drop a comment below. What do you think really happened that morning? Share this video with someone who loves true crime. Every share helps us bring more untold stories to light. Thank you for listening. This story is based on real court records, police reports, and documented testimony from the death of DeAngelo Tobia. Some scenes have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. Our deepest respect goes to DeAngelo's family and loved ones.
Tom, can you send somebody over?
Even if it's drowned in bed, but